Alright then. Let's not waste any more time, seeing as how we're late already. Apologies for that again. But there were some things that needed doing for me today. I'll most likely also not go for quite as long today. I am quite tired. Good evening, Moon, and good evening to everyone else. No, I definitely need to get more exercise. My chest is always so compressed. Ah, well, probably not quite as vibrant today. As it has been a long day, but, we shall continue a little bit onwards regardless. Yes, let's get rid of all of this. And then, let's see, where are we here? So, for our next thumbnail, we have two alterations, obviously, that need doing. One of them would be, or two new additions, rather. Yes, well, alliterations are very important, so, I will agree with you there. So, we have two people swapped out at the moment, with the Blade of Frontiers and the One-Horned Devil. Starian's still in our party because, you know, someone's gotta open up all of those chests and disarm those traps. But, yeah. So, okay, where's the sketch? Okay, this is that sketch. There's this sketch. I have gone ahead and taken some reference images for both of our new candidates here. Hold on, let me just migrate these away for now. And then, let's see. We did give Karlak the same sword that Lae'zel had previously, but I am thinking we stick with the axe for her. Since she does have more axe energy than sword energy. Yeah, that's a good point. Hold on. Let me just get these slightly further out of the way. There we go. I do think we started off pretty strong with the initial sketch here for Karlak. So I am probably gonna follow that one pretty closely. Just need to watch out for any irregularities, inaccuracies, etc. Hold on. So first things first would be new layer. New group. And then within that group, we're gonna copy over this base again. Nope. Nope. Copy layer. That should do it. No? Missing color profile. How? Reference image from... Oh, because I'm still on the reference image tool. That's why. I see. Now, there we are. So if we just move this thing over here, we have like a good, well, literally base to work off of in terms of scale. And then from there, we can see where it takes us. So, Karlak's clothing is both very complex and very simple. Very complex in the details, very simple in the overall construction. So, I'll kind of have to... I mean, the pants are pretty self-explanatory. The top, we're gonna have to kind of figure out what we'll do there, since this obviously can't really survive the chibification process. Yeah, it's... we heard you liked belts, so we added more belts to your belts, so your belts can belt more. Oh. There we go. There we go. Really, it's kind of weird. We've made like the two twinks extremely wide. So I think we should not make the other ones too narrow, or else that's gonna be weird. And then so having her pants kind of like here. I was thinking about fucking with shadows again for Carla, because she's a bit of a light source. But it's not visible from the back, unfortunately. I was kind of thinking we might have... Ah, that's something I could have taken reference of. Hold on. When she's on fire, going Super Saiyan in her introductory scene, I was thinking we could kind of go off of that a bit. So... just gonna look up that scene on YouTube. No, not that introduction. I mean, like... in the... yeah, there we go. Is there gonna be, like, a good shot here? I mean... it's mostly just non-distinct fire particles. But, like, something inspired by this. We obviously don't have to follow it to a letter, but yeah, having, like, some, like, fire particles coming off of her would be cool, I think. And then, okay, so I'm thinking we like simplify these belts here into one or two, and then we also have one or two belts going horizontally. I think that's like the way to do it. So like this, and then like this or something, I think. And then like one of these rings or so. Mm, yeah, something like this. That's also an interesting. My idea would be to have, the area around her be illuminated slightly, but making it slightly singed is also a good idea. Um, Maybe a bit of both. Hmm. How to... Mm-hmm. Then I feel like we should probably add like a little bit of detailing on the pants. Only trouble is that it's really hard to do, because there really isn't that much detail to speak of. Although, hold on. Actually, these belts here, they do continue like past the... What is that there? This sort of thing. God damn it. I never take enough reference images. Uh, Etsy Karlak figurine to the rescue. Looks slightly uncanny, but it has great detail in the clothing, which is what we're after. So it's... And she has, like, such an interesting design. Such an interesting outfit. And just design in general, like, both the, like, character design when it comes to the... Yeah, that's obviously an option, but that takes a while, and I'm lazy. But yeah, both, like, her outfit wise her character design and the actual body part of the character is both like really good and like works together really well. Just the completely cobbled together look, like haphazardly repaired and repaired over and over again, with all these different pieces barely hanging together, and then over all the scarring on the skin and the studs here, that I think also glow when she's overheating. Like they're almost like they're venting systems in her body. And that mirrored in those little plates she has woven into her hair. It's such a good design. Yeah, um, it's also so funny when you look at her design in like the early alphas or something stages of the game. She looks so different. It's so funny. But anyways, we were interested about this thing, and I think these, like, I don't even know what these are necessarily, like buckles, almost belt buckles. I think we can also incorporate them somewhat here, like having two of them like here at the side, like so. And then like that, I guess. And then here the pants have like some very rough stitching, but I think... Can we include that? Or is that too much? Well, it's probably not going to be that visible anyways, which... Well, no, actually, seeing as how the tail also goes here, it would be too much, but that means we now have like an acceptable depth of detail for the lower body. I think I actually managed to get the swoop of the tail pretty well in this preliminary sketch, so we're just gonna follow that blindly. No need to reinvent the wheel. Go. Then the ridges are like this. And then... Okay, so the axe. Maybe more something like this. Yes, but moved down slightly, so more like this. Then having that there. Something like this. Yeah, I think now we're getting there. This hand needs to be slightly lower. Maybe... Actually, yeah, it probably does need to be further inwards. So, in the end, it's not gonna be all that visible. But we know it's there. And then the alignment of the axe. I'm guessing something more like this, slightly. Something feels off here. But can't quite put my finger on what. Nah, it's probably fine. Is that too small? No, that's good, size-wise. Go. Then the real thing isn't actually that long, but I think expanding it out a bit like so makes it more pleasing to look at. And then, yeah, still some things like off with that head. The axe head, I mean. We haven't really done much about Karlach's head yet. That's better, I think. There we go. Also a really nice designed axe. I mean, not really much special about it, but it does really fit Karlach, like character-wise, very well. Something's still kind of off. Like, this part still needs to be longer almost. Better? Maybe. Alright, and then from the axe head to the demon head. So we're definitely going with a more 3/4 look for Karlach. Definitely want her horns a lot bigger than they actually are on her regular head. With that miniature chibi look. Like this. And then ears like here. That looks pretty good, I would say. So let's turn that into some actual line art then. Line. Kind of conflicted. Could continue using this more rough line art brush, or could go for this more cleaner one, because honestly, I mean, at this scale, the sort of roughness dissolves into nothing but noise anyways. If we look at the... well, actually, it does still... no, let's keep it, since we're in too deep now. We've done it for too many of the others already. Yeah, and it does add like a nice bit of, I guess texture to the line art would be the correct term. Oh, hello, Ida. Classic Tav. Yeah, I'm sorry, we're getting rid of Frog Wife. I'm sure she'll be back in due time, but for now, we are in the presence of frontier blades and firebrands. Which is probably what I'm gonna call the next episode, because I always devote way too much time thinking about what I'm gonna title the videos. Though honestly, with it gets significantly harder the longer a series goes on. So with Baldur's Gate 3 at the moment, it's still pretty smooth sailing, but with Book of Hours, I'm starting to struggle to come up with ones I haven't done already. Right, that's kind of hair on the back. Hold on, let me get... Now we'll figure it out as we go along. Yeah, well, I mean, I am very I would call my playstyle methodical. You might not be wrong in saying, slow. I mean, with Book of Hours, I do feel like it is a lot of, like, routine, but at the same time, I am still pretty interested in with progressing through the house. What I do think is a bit, you know, you settle into this kind of rhythm, especially with the books and skills, you know, getting more lessons from the books and then using the lessons with the books, using the books to generate memories and then using the memories to advance the lessons, which is just, there's so many of them. So not many rooms, because currently that's kind of the dilemma I'm faced with, because I keep thinking it's gonna be Numa, so I want to get rid of all of my lessons until then. So I focus on lessons instead of rooms. And then Numa doesn't come, and I think, okay, so I can gain some more, I can stack up on some new lessons then, and then I'm once again in the same position. But yeah, I wanna... And it's also just, of course, the fact that getting more rooms obviously gets increasingly difficult, whereas I feel like we still have a lot of, it's still pretty easy to get, to move forward when it comes to the lessons. Yeah, I mean, it's not like Cultist Simulator didn't also have some cycles like that. I mean, at the end of the day, the vaults are kind of, if you want to be technical, pretty repetitive, and especially the upgrading of your base stats. That's always the same every run, and it is always pretty repetitive. But yeah, I do think that in Cultist Simulator, just the fact that you constantly have to worry about dying in one of many, many different ways makes it more engaging, because you always have to be careful. So even though, you know, it's, like, what's a good analogy? Even though you've juggled these knives many times before, they're still knives, so there's still a certain kind of thrill to it. Yeah, I do think there's just too many skills. They should have probably cut them down. And I am kind of wondering what... Well, I'm guessing it's probably a result of the fact that you need different... like, you need... because you can only commit each skill once to the Tree of Wisdoms, and there's a lot of branches on the Tree of Wisdoms. What was it? I think 9 times 9, so it's 9 branches, each with 9 points. So that's 81 skills, and I think that was like the main pitfall, I think, of the game, because that simple piece of math kind of resulted in them putting in so many skills. Whereas I don't know how you could have fixed that, but probably by just balancing the game around having much fewer soul cards. So instead of having 9 times 9 points on the Tree of Wisdoms, you could just have, I don't know, 5 by 5, or even just 7 by 7 would already be a drastic reduction. Or just, have the same amount of soul aspect cards, but reduce the total number you can get, so you have like 9 times 4 or something, that you can only get 4 of each soul card or something like that. So 9 times 4 would be 36, or 9 times 5, 45. Still a lot of skills, but a lot more manageable. Yeah, it's... Yeah, it's complicated, like... I definitely understand where the decisions, the changes and like the decisions come from that make the game feel the way it feels, but it does still, the game does still suffer from them in part, but there's also parts that I do really like. Yeah, and that's also the thing. Like, I can't really imagine playing this game without doing that. I can't really imagine playing this game without writing down every single memory you can get and every single source of that memory. Um, just, I don't think I ever took notes playing Cultist Simulator. Um, I just, for the most part, just memorized it in my head, which was good enough in this game at the beginning, but at the point where we're at the moment, I cannot imagine memorizing all of that in your head. I mean, you definitely have time, since, you can just pause Cultist Simulator at any point. One thing I will say that's definitely an improvement is the fact that you have much more control over the flow of time now. Since in Call of Simulator you only had pause, play, and I think 2 times speed, giving you 4 times, 6 times, and I think 8 times speed was definitely an improvement. Also a feature that Call of Simulator would have probably improved from. Yeah, I think that's probably a good point, because in Cultist Simulator, a lot of the game actually depended on, the like stuff that happened outside of your control. And in Book of Hours, the only thing that really happens in that respect is, you get a new season ever so often, and then you get one affair and sometimes one auction offer, and I don't think, and then obviously once yearly you get your pay, but that's not really an event, whereas, you know, in Culture Simulator, every 60 seconds there's a new season, and every new season brings some new thing that you have to take care of. That's actually, yeah, a good point. Having like more events that happen day to day would have been a good idea. I mean, I don't really know what they could have done in terms of events, because like the main problem, of course, is that I do get the point of Book of Hours that it's supposed to be explicitly less punishing and more of a, you know, relaxed puzzle game. So the problem with events there is, you know, how do you force the player to engage with them when there's not really that much you can do to punish the player for not engaging with the event, um, due to the way the game is structured, but maybe there'd be something. I mean, they do have the weather, which I think, you know, that often determines, like one opportunity for something unique you can do that day because it's a memory that you couldn't get otherwise. And I think having more stuff like the weather, each and every single day, would have maybe been, yeah, would have probably made it less repetitive, because it is definitely nice that, you know, sometimes you get a certain kind of weather card that's pretty potent, that's pretty rare, and then it does make that day more engaging because you have an unexpected opportunity that you can capitalize for exactly this day, and then it's gone, which can switch up what you had planned for that day. So yeah, adding more stuff like the weather cards and something would have been interesting. Oh, I also just realized we completely neglected her like greaves, not greaves. What's the bracers? That's the one. Greaves is for the legs. And then this side, she has these tusks woven into her like armband. And what would you call that? Like, I mean, armband is something you have on your wrist. It's well, you know, the don't worry, I'm sure she'll be back in short time. I do. I am currently. I mean, it's not something we have to decide for now, but for the future, I do wonder if we want to update her art with, you know, the sword she's holding. Since, you know, that sword is currently the one we use for Karlach, and we did also find a different great sword that might be even better for Lae'zel. Wife gone. Think about wife. Regret. Look, it's a fire sword. Obviously I'm gonna give the fire sword to the fire gal. It seems sensible. Especially since, I'm not really gonna have both of them in the same party probably anytime soon, since, I mean, mechanically, sure, fighter and barbarian are different enough, but, if we look at party comp and what roles they fulfill, they may as well be the same thing. Like, you want a front line, you got a front line. There. Because we're playing Wizards of the Coast's D&D 5th edition, where the gods love the casters and hate the marshals. Although, I mean, that is mitigated in BG3 somewhat by the exquisite offering of magic items, so there's that. To balance it out a bit. Oh. Get rid of that a bit so we have more space where the great axe is visible. Yeah. It's like a big part of it, that is true, yeah, yeah, exactly, trying to, did that, right, because Baldur's Gate E came before D&D 2024, right, it's the 2023 game, but yeah, they did also add, like, some elements of that into, I haven't really played a martial in D&D 2024 yet, so... Yeah, actually, I think I've played more barbarians than fighters on the whole, but I will say, in the defense of the fighter, I will say that the fact that it is, objectively the most generic D&D class makes it very flexible in terms of character. Like, you can, because it's just, the class is literally, you are a person that fights, a fighter can basically be anyone as long as they fight. Do they fight? If yes, then they can be a fighter. Whereas, a lot of the other classes have much more strict specifications of what exactly they are, which means that it limits the kinds of characters you can make as them, unless you're willing to, something which I sometimes like to do, if my DM allows it, take the mechanics of a class, but basically file away the serial numbers and add a different flavor to it. But with Fighter, you don't have to do that because there are no serial numbers. It's literally just they fight things, that's it. And spoiler alert, most fictional characters, or especially most characters in fantasy settings, they fight things. So they could be a fighter. Yeah. I mean, Barbarian also, like, just, I mean, both a big pro and also somewhat of a con, it really depends, is that, you know, Barbarian is appropriately probably one of the most brain-dead classes. I say that affectionately, but I did kind of notice it my last time I was playing. I was like, damn, there really isn't that much for me to do. I mean, it's not that it's definitely not that I'm useless, but I, you know, I always immediately know what I'm gonna do my turn before the turn has even begun, because, I mean, what do you think you're gonna do? You're gonna hit them. Which, I guess isn't that different from Fighter, but with Fighter you do have a bit more versatility. Yeah, I really liked my last barbarian character, the half-orc nobleman, leaning into the idea that they're like, yeah. I have yet to meet man that can outsmart great axe, that can outsmart rock. Hmm. This feels a bit too regular here. Need something to break it up. But yeah, it's definitely... It is kind of a bit of a double-edged blade, because you can sometimes be a bit bored with some types of martials with, you know, you already know what you're gonna do. But with a caster, it's very often, what the fuck am I gonna do? I have like 50 different options. And they're all like, maybe this, maybe that. Which I think is another reason why I like the Warlock, because I think that's like a good middle ground where, you know, you do have, you know, okay, well, you don't have a lot of spells. I lied. You don't have a lot of spells at all, but it's still like a decent middle ground where you have quite a few options each turn in combat, but they are somewhat limited. And you do have like a how would you say it? Like um, default action, like a few good default actions you can always fall back on if nothing else fails. You know, when in doubt, Eldritch Blast! Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, though, you know, guy with gun, but you can do like a few interesting things per combat. And, you know, or short rest, depending on how your table treats short rests. That's always the fickle thing with Warlock. Um, is like, how often will your party short rest? Though, you know, depending, I do think they're also like the packed, uh, packed boons. I always mix up the different like stuff you get as a warlock. Um, but yeah, the bit different like pack stuff you get, packed stuff, not pack stuff. That's that's probably more druid. Um, Pact of the Chain or Pact of the Blade, but then also stuff like Agonizing Blast, Repelling Blast. You get a lot more things in your toolkit that don't necessarily depend on your spell slots or your Eldritch Blast, or it could still very much be your Eldritch Blast, but now it's slightly different. So, you know, with Pact of the Chain, obviously you gain like a whole new guy. You can use during combat and also out of combat because you know the imp is just as far as familiars go. Again, I've spoken about it before, but it's busted how useful that thing is. It's good in combat, but straight up busted outside of it because it can't just be invisible always, constantly, at no cost. And that alone is so useful. And then, you know, like a Pact of the Tome gives you a lot more spells and cantrips to work with. So you get like, so the wizards won't laugh at you as hard anymore. Her hair is still, actually, it's not that accurate at the moment, but I think it might actually just work the way it is now. And then, okay, the swoop of this horn needs to be improved. But yeah, one of the next character concepts I really want to play is Artificer, Armorer, Mech Pilot, which I've spoken about before, but just the idea of having, of using the armor as an actual, like, big mech suit instead of medieval armor is really interesting, especially if you have, since the Behemoth in 2024, the Behemoth armor can get up to large, and you as a player race can actually be small, so it's a small creature, you know, piloting a large armor, which is quite a significant size difference. So that I think could be really cool if, though it is kind of predicated on the DM working a little bit with you on the flavoring and stuff like that, since, you know, technically the way Rogue Works rules is written is that it's still your regular, the armor is still your regular size by default, and you can just use a bonus action to make the armor bigger. And then, oh yeah, right, is there no Hexblade in, Baldur's Gate 3? I didn't really check, since we only looked at the, since we didn't, since you can only choose subclasses for Warlock at level 1, and Wills is all obviously set in stone. Never played a Hexblade, I think. Don't think so, at least. But I haven't really played that many of them, but I do always like the idea, the fantasy of a swordcaster. Spellblade. But, I mean, you do have, what was it? Pact of the Blade or Warlock, which, I mean, we went for Pact of the Chain first, but I am kind of, I do feel somewhat obliged to go for Pact of the Blade at some point with Will, since, you know, he is the Blade of Frontiers. I think this is good. Right, yeah. Hold on, yeah, I think having the broken horn like this, it's obviously much bigger than in the actual character model, but that's by design, since this is a chibi. Then let's add curveball, and then this one. Then coloration for her should be fairly simple, I think. And then obviously we will have to think a bit more about any kinds of effects, like giving her this kind of burning aura, or, you know, having her smolder a bit, or have like the battle map around her slightly singed or smoldering. Ooh, also, one thing, I don't think it really works. It's not really something we can do the way the shadows are currently, but it would have been really cool if the canvas stretched a bit further here for Will to have his shadow already with the horns. That would be neat, but unfortunately the heads of the shadows are beyond the frame. That's also something we'll have to update on him once it happens. At least if he's still in the party at that point, which... now that we have... now that Carla can also do Speak with Animals... Well, we'll see. He does have the imp now, which makes him a very attractive companion for certain areas where there's a lot of scouting to be done. But at the same time, we can also use our own familiar, even though, you know, that one can't go invisible by itself. You mean invisible, or...? Invisible. Invisible. Okay, now that we have the volume, I think I'm seeing like a few things that could still use a bit of cleanup in the line art. Oh. No, it's check. There we go. Yeah, I think now it does still kind of feel a bit off somehow. It's fine. There we go, yeah. Okay, and then let's add like her skin tone first. Oh. No, that's not good. go. Oh, no. Purple sticking out there. There we go. And now the leather. Most of it's gonna be like kind of the same color, so yeah, let's go with this lighter base first, and then we can darken that one where we see fit. There we go. And then the color of those rings, that's gonna be a tough one. Quite desaturated here, so I think I am actually gonna use this one as the color basis. Yeah, something like this is good. There we go. And then this darker tone here, and then a splash of white here, that metal sheen. There we go. And then, are we gonna incorporate a lot of these? Yeah, I think we're gonna incorporate some of these metal studs here. By just plopping them in here like this, a bit lighter. Yeah, something like that. And then we're gonna put those yes, something like that, maybe. Still feels a bit lacking, but it's gonna be hard getting some more of that detail. This like diminished one, but yeah, I think this less bluish tint would be better. There we go, I think. Any more of these stud? No, the pants are studless. But it's gonna be pretty hard getting this like very particular like burnt leather texture, right? Something like this, maybe? Yeah, something like that. Ooh, yeah. And then the hair. That's gonna be tricky. No, that's too dark. Let's try get like the lightest tone we can get for now. And then slowly work in those darker tones. Hmm. Um, Then one of the kind of problems here, of course, is that the hair and the horns have very similar colors. Though there are subtle distinctions we can work with. Yeah, I think that's good. Now, question is, do we want to include, like, the fire in her hair? That's a good question. And if we do we want to isolate it on it separately? I think that's what we'll do. We'll put the fire in her hair and stuff like that on like a separate layer on top of the line art. That way it pops a little more and we can also isolate it in case we decide we don't like it. What's like a good tone for that stuff? That looks good. Mm-hmm. I was thinking with just like pretty bright orange, because otherwise it's gonna be lost. I think this is like a good sample for, if not the shape of the fire, at least the coloring. There we go, one Karlak. Though, let's add a little bit of shading to that axe. Just a tad. Like, like this. And then... like this. Yep. It still looks a bit tiny. It's fine. Because otherwise it takes up too much space that cuts into the other characters, and we don't want that either. So, okay, question now is, do I want to do the fire effect first, or do I want to get started on Will? Because I'm not sure if I'm gonna... As if we spend a lot of time now on the fire, I'm not sure I'll be able to really have the time and energy left to get started on Will. And there were like a few things I wanted to get done with him. I don't think we're gonna finish him to the same degree as Karlak on stream, but I at least wanted to get like the basic posing and sketch done. Okay, so gonna make like a sketch of the fire. And we're gonna use... yeah, something like this first. And then... no, that's too golden. We do want it to be redder. Don't really recall how her hair looked when it was on fire. Nah, it's not. And then see like a surrounding effect. How would I? Yeah, I think I think going for like something similar to this would be interesting. Nah. Maybe just as like outlines like this. Yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe you're right. Yeah, let's just leave it like that for now. I think I'm... Mainly, I think a color thing, and that I obviously struggle with a bit, but... Yeah, I think this is something I'll continue tomorrow, because I am quite happy with how it's, where it's at right now. So... Let's... sketch. Well... first things first... The... base... to kind of give us a good idea. Hold on, there is something... Slightly odd with the positioning here. Hold on. Yeah, I really like how this one turned out, but I had a feeling this one would work pretty well just because of how strong her design is. And then for Will, my idea is to have a pose that's very inspired by this one in his introduction, because that one I find embodies him as a character really well, this sort of fencing point heroic pose. So the main challenge there obviously would be translating it into the chibi proportions, but oh. Yeah, exactly, and like this self-assured heroism. So that would mean having him in a pretty angled position as well. Yeah, very Zorro-esque, that's true. Hold on, let me just quickly grab this for like where the head should be at. So, if we go for this, obviously his rapier in his right, and then... Okay, no, then this is the wrong way around. So this side forward, this side back. And then, well, it is unfortunately kind of cutting into specifically where Karlach's axe handle is here, but having, you know, like one thing, one arm kind of here, and then the other pointing forwards with the rapier like straight ahead at the... Hold on. Where is... There we go, like straight ahead at the DM screen, basically. He does have like very good poise and posture. And I kind of want to preserve that. Something like this, and then his hair is pretty simple. Kind of weird. He does have like a little bit of a ponytail here, but it tends to like, for some reason the way it's rendered, it tends to become like melded into his skin. But yeah, there is supposed to be like a ponytail here. And then obviously his... I don't even know how you call this type of hair, this type of hairstyle. It's obviously not really dreadlocks, but like... these like... I don't even know how it works exactly, how you get these like very intricately like close to the actual scalp, these like very closely tied to the scalp, following like the lines of the scalp, locks or braids. But yeah, yeah, obviously like looking straight ahead, so we'll have his little ponytail here, and then something like this. And then the question's gonna be like how much of like the side of his head are we gonna make visible? Because he does have pretty dread braids. Interesting, okay. But yeah, there's like a lot of very interesting, there's like a very big school of very interesting sort of hairstyles, with, you know, various different African origins mainly that I don't really know that much about. Um, yeah. Um, yeah, I do always love, I am very much like a fan of having a bit of a playfully adversarial relationship with your DM. Obviously, not like actually where you are actually upset at them or, you know, players are upset at you as the DM, but having this, you know, channeling this like gleeful, Bond villain-esque energy. Um, like, way I'd put it is like, nothing wrong with your players being a little afraid of you. You know, just a little. uh, but yeah, mainly have like the... I mean, and with Will, of course, we do also have to spare some thought to the fact that, you know, I am aware that his look is gonna change a tad in the near future, and it probably makes sense to plan the composition around that a little bit already. Um, so that when we make the alterations to reflect those changes, uh, it still the composition overall still works. So, for example, I'm slightly worried when it comes to the blade hand here, but I think it might be fine. Yeah, I think it should be fine. And if not, we can, like... hold on, trying to... straight ahead, we can also... Could also go for more of a... I don't know what the exact term is, but having a sort of withdrawn, like raised point guard with a fence, I think the term is. Maybe, but then again, in that case, we would also add. Well, I was gonna say then well, then we should probably also add like a mini, like a mini raven. To our Tav, but that might also not be such a bad idea. I think I'm gonna keep it. I think that's something I won't do for now, but it might be an interesting addition in the future. That is true. Fair point. Yeah, I think for now we'll just have the characters themselves, but that would be an interesting thing to add in the future to keep it fresh. Provoke the blade and feel its sting. Like, don't remember the name of his VA, but Will's VA is also so good. I feel like like Will himself oftentimes gets overshadowed a bit by the rest of the cast, but he does such a good job at playing this. Um, he sounds so much like a hero, like a standard, like knight in shining armor. It also makes a lot of sense that he's, because he sounds like very heroic and refined, which also makes sense, of course, with his background as the son of a, I don't know, like a noble. I know his father. Yeah, Theo Solomon. Yeah, he just, like, especially that opening line, that cheesy action hero one-liner of like, provoke the blade and feel its sting, is like, damn, it's so good, so well delivered. It's also just a very interesting, I think. I really like the concept of Will as a warlock, having the warlock of the party be the most outwardly and like traditionally heroic. Yeah, he does. I do think he has like the best introduction of all the characters. At least of the ones I don't actually know what the introduction or if there is one of some of the later companions. But I mean, at this point, we have already recruited what most would consider to be like the core group. So, I mean, the later ones. Well, actually, probably shouldn't ask because it's spoilers. But I am currently, at least, under the impression that the companions that you recruit past this point aren't actually tadpole brained, right? Or I shouldn't ask, right, because it's technically spoilers, but yeah, and then he has that added Gambison. Ah, man, always should have taken like pictures of it from the side or from the front to see how exactly it opens up on the front, or if it opens up. Hold on. But that's also the type of stuff I can just Google. Images. Oh yeah, there we go. Copy image. There we go. So, okay. Yeah, I think something like this. And then we can do the same we did with Shadow Art and narrow his legs a little to make the sort of skirt effect a bit stronger. We also did that with Gale. Also further adds to the impression that he's standing, at an angle. Yeah, that I think works really well. And then the main feature he has on his back is the belt. And then also up here we've got the sort of leather... Would you call that a... No, it's mostly just a collar, not really a full gorget? Gorget? How do you pronounce that in English? I don't know. And yeah, the waistline of that thing is fairly high up, as it should be. And then these kind of interesting construction of the armor. I will say that's also one of, like, to me at least, one of the biggest jumps from, biggest improvements from Divinity Original Sin 2 to Baldur's Gate 3, is just the art direction, especially when it comes to the armor. Because I'm gonna be honest, I really, for the most part, don't like the look of the armor and outfits in Divinity there. They are decidedly too high fantasy for my taste. With like, you know, tons of like very complex and elaborate decorations that don't really make that much sense, where in Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of the armor is still very, very decorated and, like, elaborate, but they're also constructed in a very believable way. Like, everything, every little, like, cut of fabric and, you know, shaping, seems very sensible and like believable as an actual piece of clothing or armor you could put on and have it function. Like, for example, in this case, this like very interesting construction of having almost sort of like extremely high-rising gloves that then merge into the padded gambeson, which isn't really something I think that's very common, at least in this particular style, in our world, but that is absolutely practical and, you know, both from like this would make sense to wear, it wouldn't, like, especially, you know, in our world, what was more common was having a more poofy fabric here, but having this like sort of bit, I think, lighter fabric here would make the thing definitely more agile while still providing good protection. It definitely makes sense that you could shape the different tiles of textile this way and sew them together in this way. You can really tell that these, there was a lot of thought put behind it from both like a practical aspect when it comes to wearing them and also making them. Like, you could wear and tailor all of these in real life, all of these outfits, and that's just one of those things that I think really enhance like the look of fantasy clothing and armor, when you can tell that it can be worn and made in real life. So, still, okay, it's essentially like a cut here and then a further cut here. And then underneath we have yeah. I think the one thing that kind of, I mean, okay, for now I've only seen like very low level stuff, of course. I imagine there's more out there stuff later in the game. Um, the one thing I've kind of noticed sometimes that's a bit like strange is that, you know, you have armor that is realistic, but also, you know, it's realistic in a technical level, but um it's not very realistic where you see it. You know, for example, in the grove with the druids and the tiefling refugees, some of them have such intricate and expensive looking armor. Especially the main guy, which, I mean, it makes sense, he's the leader, but even some of his, some of the other tieflings, they have armor that looks so expensive and like so finely, masterfully crafted, that it kind of feels out of place in this setting. You know, these are supposed to be refugees, people who are desperate, and the armor looks absolutely immaculate and masterfully crafted. Whereas, you know, I think having a sort of rougher, more worn, damaged, and just simpler armor would have probably made a bit more sense. But yeah, one thing I've also recently, I've never actually, but like one really good example when it comes to clothing and armor in fantasy is actually Game of Thrones. Especially now with Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I've never watched it, but I've seen excerpts. I did read. I don't even know how far I got into the books. I think I stopped at some point because I couldn't find new ones, but I do think there are more books, at least at this point, than I've read. Because if I recall correctly, I read like all the way up to the moment where Jon Snow is like assassinated at the Night Watch, and not much further beyond that. But I think there's like one or two books that he wrote after that I didn't read. Probably have to get around it at some point. But yeah, in that show, and especially now in the new one, the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, like the armor is so on point. Yeah, it's that's true. Like the cloth stuff and leather stuff is really good. But especially, yeah, when you get to some like some of the plate and plate chain and especially scale, it feels a little out of place sometimes. But yeah, especially like the cloth and padded cloth and leather stuff is really good. But yeah, in recently, I haven't actually finished the video, but it was a video not on armor in Game of Thrones, but clothing. And how it's basically, when it comes to clothing, the best fantasy show, period, because there's so much consideration of, what fabrics are most accessible to a region, what kind of dyes do they have, what kind of clothing styles are going to be most popular in that region with which groups, and how do the clothes best suit the climate and stuff like that. Really interesting stuff, but there's like, with the armor in Game of Thrones, I think there are like a few things that are a bit, mainly in terms of helmets, but seeing some of the, especially the Lannister armor is really good, just really sensibly constructed, and also um, a lot of the Northman armor uh, with the sort of look so many of them have with the plate gorget that's very like a very big plate gorget worn over a leather covered brigantine with metal plates on the inside. Yeah, it does kind of have a bit of vibes like that. I definitely want to read the Hedge Knight books as well, because I do distinctly remember that reading A Song of Ice and Fire itself, the part that I found, I think, most interesting were the chapters where that are more concerned with, the small folk. Like there's several chapters when Arya is fleeing from the capital, King's Landing, with some of the other people that are headed for the Night's Watch, where they just like traveled through the countryside and see how the wars of the nobles and kings affect the small folk. And I think those are some of the best chapters. And that's kind of the thing that the Hedge Knight books focus on, so should definitely read those at some point. Mm-hmm. No, let's get rid of that for now. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's written any more books since the time I read them. So, by the time I read them, I think all of them were that are currently out were already out. But I do distinctly remember, like, in the last few years, coming across like book discussions of things that happen in the book and being like, I definitely didn't read those parts. So I think what happened is like I, read the books and then I couldn't find one of the next ones. And then I think I just assumed that that one wasn't out yet, when in reality it was. So I'm definitely missing at least one, maybe two, maybe even three books. Interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to, because I think I did actually read. I did really like his writing style, but I think I read most of the books in German translation, so not actually his original writing, but but the translation was also really, really good. Um, like genuinely very well written, which I think is like, at least by my reckoning, is pretty hard to do for a translation. Preserving that very unique writing style in an entirely different language. Especially, the fact that it's just the way, like, since the chapters are all from different characters' perspectives, you can really like tell just the writing is completely different for every character, basically. Like the things they focus on, the things you know, even stuff that goes beyond their internal thoughts, but just, you know, the narration will focus on different things while we're in the POV of different characters. It will mention some things in from the perspective of one person that might not have been there, that might not have been mentioned if we were following the POV of another person, or, you know, the, like, you know, just the metaphors that are used or ways that things are described are filtered through the perspective of that character, and it's really interesting. So, for example, with Tyrion, a lot of his chapters are always the funniest because, you know, he's one of the funnier characters, and just the way he sees the world is very cynical in a humorous, ironic way. So, you know, just the way things are described are very amusing when we would see them described through Tyrion's perspective, because he always puts like his own little spin on it. Yeah, exactly. I'm in Tangent City. Sorry. But yeah, it's something. I mean, obviously not unique to Game of Thrones, or I guess A Song of Ice and Fire. But George R. R. Martin is definitely really good at doing it. And whoever did the translation into German for the books did a really good job of preserving that. Because it's like, oh, I'm trying to remember when I read them. It's ages ago at this point. I think I was like 16 or 17 or so, and that was one of the first times. I mean, I read a ton of books during that time, but that was like one of the first times I was really like, damn, this is just really well written moment to moment. Yeah, it's honestly, I don't like writing in German at all. It's so difficult. Because yeah, it's such a precise language, and like in English, what I love so much about English as a language is because it's a compound language, there are so many different synonyms for each and every single word. They say that you know, German has a word for everything, but English has like 5 words for almost everything. And it gives you so much more range with your descriptions. You can make slight alterations by choosing a slightly different word or using a slightly different formulation. Whereas in German, oftentimes, there's only like 1 or 2 ways you can really say something. Or at least I often struggle to find more than that. So doing especially, you know, more, you know, narrative and like creative writing in German can, to me at least, can feel like incredibly stifling at times. When I'm like, how do I word this correctly? In like a way that is both grammatically correct and actually conveys the tone I want. Yeah, yeah, the flow. That's a very good word for it. Yeah, it's like there are advantages to having a very exact language, um, but there are definitely also disadvantages, and especially for the way I approach writing, I find the exactness to be pretty suffocating. But you know, there's also been like a few notable writers, English writers, who liked German for that exact reason. Like, most notable example probably being, who was it? Mark Twain, I think. Yeah, Mark Twain really liked German. It is a thing. German rap is a thing, and I won't say more on it. It exists, and I won't say more on German rap. It exists. People listen to it. That's all I'll say. Yeah, but I mean, there's like a few examples of German rap that I find okay, but like a few alligator songs are like, but it's nothing that I actually actively listen to. Where I'm like genuinely, this is a banger. This one I want to listen to on repeat. Whereas, I listen to a lot of English rap, not as much as I used to actually, but yeah, you can. That's also a really good example because, um, for example, one example when we're on the topic of rap, um, because I am me, of course, the kind of rap I often listen to is nerdcore because of course I do. I mean, and there's like a few people in that subgenre, like the Stupendium, if anyone's familiar with them. um, they they have like such a lyrical talent that is just some of the most clever and like brilliant lyrics I've ever heard, and you couldn't do this in any other language. The kind of like extremely extremely dense with meaning and double meaning and triple meaning, and like several rhyme schemes overlapping with each other at the same time with all of those meanings preserved and stuff like that. You could only do that in English, I think. And then, he does. Will does have pretty visible ears from behind, since he does have like something resembling a what's the term, side cut? Is that the word? I'm not sure. I'm not a very I'm not very familiar with barber terminology. I haven't cut my hair since 2019. So um so he does have slightly or pretty visible ears in his like default head shape, and I think in the chibi we do want the hair to be a bit take up a bit more space than it does usually, but we'll still have his ears slightly here. Yeah, my hair is very long. I think almost I mean, if you were to like fully put out, it's like underneath, I think, like slightly or like barely underneath. Ah, hold on. No, actually, okay, if I have like a straight, if I have like a upright head, yeah, it's like to under my pecs, almost to the bottom of my rib cage. My hair. I definitely, when it comes to hair, I definitely had luck in the genetic lottery. Um, very very thick, voluminous hair. But then again, it can also be a nightmare to comb sometimes. So, you know, upsides and downsides. Yes, very powerful. And I'm also my um one of my grandfathers, or I guess my only grandfather, he's Korean, and I'm praying. I definitely inherited a fair few of his genetics, but I'm praying he's 90 now, and he still has like dark gray hair. Not that much of it, but he still has like a decent amount of hair on his head, and it's in parts still essentially like dark brown to black. Yeah, I mean, my hair has stopped growing along like several years ago, so not really wouldn't really be hard to catch up to me there. But yeah, I'm like oftentimes like whenever I see him, I'm like, damn, I hope I get his genetics on that account. Because like it is kind of insane seeing him like 90 years old and still like a pretty full head of hair on his head. That is, you know, in parts it's white, but in parts is also still very dark gray. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I like this sketch. So let's move on to the line art. Kind of thinking, I had like the brief thought we could have some kind of like, you know, some like black swirls like in the way of like an eldritch blast in his hand, but I think we're just gonna stick to like the basic, you know, outward heroic pose with him for now. Nope. There we go, that's better. And then here. Hmm. There we go. I think, yeah. I just need to get some of that. There we go. And then the handguard of his rapier. It's pretty standard. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna go with something like this, and then the rest is gonna disappear behind his hand. go. And then here. So, kind of the question how that, those upper leather straps would bend if the thing was shaped like this, but maybe we don't really need to worry about it that much. That's one, it's definitely one advantage of this more chibi art style. If we're not so sure about a piece of detail, we can just omit it and it won't, and no one will notice. Then here we do want this leg slightly larger. This is the one in front, and then this one. Maybe even, hold on, maybe even a bit stronger still on the bend here. Yeah, something like this, I think. There we go. And then back to this. This is will line and will volume. Go. Oh, hold on. Should have probably checked the line art in. Oh. Beforehand, make sure everything's nice and tidy. Or, well, tidy enough. Hold on, was there like more detailing here at his belt? Not really. Yeah, I do think we probably omit this collar here in favor of just keeping it like this. Or maybe, Actually, no, maybe putting a little bit of the color here will further you know, add to the impression that the torso is quite angled. So yeah, hold on, let's add that there. And that there. And then, hold on, these lines down here don't really match that well. Yeah, I think that's better. Oh, hold on. Ah. Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. Oh. Mm-hmm. And then colors. Get all this a bit further out of the way. Yeah, I did just hydrate. Hold on. Let me so stretch. Okay. So, what do we want to start on? I think we're gonna go for the color of the gambeson first. Oh, bad. Then, if I recall correctly, yeah, the sleeves do also have that same color. That's also a thing, it's like a little thing, but it also often goes underappreciated, but just the colors of all of the like the colors and materials, textures and stuff of the garments are also really on point in Baldur's Gate. Like all of the dyes feel pretty naturally achievable, and you know, materials have a color that would make sense for them to have. And then, okay. So, the leather of his belt and his I forgot what it's called again. The arm guards thingies, you know what I mean. They have basically the same color. Okay, no, we need something a bit more contrasting to the... I mean, his outfit in general isn't that high contrast, but I mean, we'll see. And then this, of course, is a lot lighter. We might even enhance that a little bit more. And then the leather here is more like this one. Ah, okay, he has like bluish cloth there at his boots, but I think we'll go more... Oh, no, let's actually take some of this more standout color. Trying to grab a... Yeah, something like this. Could stand to be a bit more outwardly blue. Wait, is it blue? I'm so bad with colors. Apparently it's not. Apparently it's red. And then his skin tone. Very orangish in comparison to his... Well, not that different from... Trying to find like a good basis for his skin tone that's still distinct enough from his garments, but then again, they do also have a really similar tone in, you know, his actual outfit, so maybe keeping some of that is just, you know, faithful adaptation, I guess. But one thing I think we can work with when it comes to the skin, it does definitely have much lighter high tones than the clothing. Oh. Right, and then his blade. The blade of the the blade of the blade. Kind of also a nice contrast to, you know, a very like dark and like earthy toned outfit, and then this very bright and shining blade. Oh, nope, that's the wrong one. Oh, I need to take another sip of water. That's, I think, the consequences of streaming 2 nights in a row when I'm not used to that. I'm starting to notice my throat kind of getting uppity. And then we begin working on, I think the hair is a good place to start with the shading, as that's pretty obvious. You just wanna... My wife, not Lazel this time, calling me to continue our Baldur's Gate 3 run. Well, then don't let me keep you. Thank you. Yeah, see you soon. Take care and have fun. Okay, so I think it's kind of a question, how do we shade this like part of the head, because I think here we do best to kind of deviate from the original, since, you know, the chibi of head is obviously a very, very different shape than an actual head. Is that like the same tone as this? Oh. Strange how sometimes like a tone can seem a lot lighter than it actually is in like a different circumstance. Okay, but that's a lot lighter. Actually, yeah, hold on. I think it's better if we keep the skin mostly unshaded. We did also do that with most of the others. I might even... Maybe we even get rid of the shading here? Hold on. If we do that... Nah, I think we keep that. And then, okay, yeah, we definitely want to add a bit more shine to the blade. And maybe... I'm kind of currently undecided because we could add, you know, the blood red blade here, but we could also leave it pristine. I'm honestly currently leaning more towards pristine because that way the blade also pops a bit more against the dark and sort of more reddish clothing and body. Just kind of wish there was a bit more here that could kind of pop against some of these darker tones. Hold on. Just a very slight hint to this here. Nope, that's too much. Mm-hmm. That's too much. Yeah, there we go. That looks good. I think we can go like a bit lighter here even. Oh, well, that's not really all that lighter. And there we go. Well, not really that much lighter. Ah, there we go. And then I am also tempted to do some like interesting things with his shadow, like having doing like something similar to, where is it? The way I forget her name, or I guess I'm obviously not supposed to know her name yet. But his patron, because she did have bat wings, alright? So maybe having like her wings sort of envelop his shadow or something similar to that effect. Yeah, that's the thing I was talking about earlier. Problem is just that the shadows, see, they just happen to cut off right where the heads would be. So that's not really an option, sadly. Yeah, doing like something with his shadow would be interesting. But I'll have to think about it. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, that's get a different angle. That could work. Yeah. Though, I mean, it would probably be pretty difficult, but it could be done if I do it right. So obviously his regular shadow would be like, hold on, let me just quickly copy this one. So I'd have the regular shadow here like this. And then, hold on, the sword arm, that's kind of the difficult one. Yeah. So for the main shadow, we have the advantage of we can follow basically the grid lines here of the battle map to tell us where the shadow goes. Something... Oh, it's because... Okay, hold on. I was wondering why the shadow had such a weird... such a weird color, but that was... because I was still using the brown. Yeah, that something like that was my idea, to basically have like the head of his patron kind of peeking out like behind him, or as if she was, you know, that being represented in his shadow. But first, I think let's just do the normal one, and then we can see what could be added to that. Hmm. Yeah, I think having like a second one that goes like this, like very slight and with like something like bat wings or something, that could be something. And if we made this one, by contrast, very, instead of making it this very like undefined cloudy shadow, having it be like extremely sharp and precise would be interesting. So how do we do that? That's probably too far. Yeah, I'm thinking something like this could maybe work. It's a bit unclear. Flip the drawing upside down? Yeah, I'll have to maybe just like one singular bat wing here. No, that doesn't look like a bat wing. That's sort of my mistake. Yeah, hold on. Let's... So this would be... So... thinking... maybe like add a glow, maybe add some like scorching. Could I put that in the shadow itself? Maybe I just... probably makes sense to do just the shadow first and then we can see what can be added on. Is that right? Yeah, so lines do vaguely support this. The tail would be like... Oh. It kind of moves out of frame here. Well, the handle of the axe would be more like here. I mean, it does get down pretty far, so like here. Or down here. And carrying all the way over here. That shadow does look pretty weird. I've never been much good at shadows, which is ironic, I guess, but oh well. It is what it is. Yeah, I'll get to the scorching. But first I want to know what I'm working with the shadows, so then I can kind of structure the scorching around that. Okay. Then let me take a look at that. Yeah. Oh yeah, these are pretty good. Oh yeah, having like holes burned into the paper is an interesting idea. Not just singed, but like fully burned through like the material. Yeah, hold on. A bit further down still. Mm-hmm. There we go. Okay. So. Hmm. 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 Oh, hold on. This should be under there. And then one thing I am kind of, if I do say so myself, pretty decent at is actually drawing like proper fire. It's a bit modest at the moment. Like, Thing is, what we'd really need to sell, like, the flame effect would be if it actually affected the, like, lighting around it. So if I... new layer, and this is lighten layer, I think, would be the correct one for this. We had like, yeah, though, after like these smaller spots, I think that might be a bit difficult, though. Maybe. So. Is this really lightning? I mean, I guess. But... so if I, like... no, this is definitely not lightning. Properties... okay, so that is then... addition, I guess. No, what? But if it's an addition layer, shouldn't... huh? Then it should only be able to... blending mode? Burn, maybe? No. Divide? No. No. Definitely not darken. Addition. Huh, it's weird. Should, if it's an addition layer, it should only... or is it... that's weird. for some reason it's not obeying, like, the... Is it the layer style? No. I don't understand this. Should... If it's addition, it should only be able to lighten. But this is obviously darkening what's underneath, so I don't really understand the principles at play here. I think I'll have to look into it on mine time. It's like, with lighting and stuff, it can be pretty finicky. Because I think what we'd really need to sell the flame effect is if it actually, has... Oh. Now my voice is... Sorry. Really failing me. If, you know, we actually see the flames having an impact on the lighting around us, around them. For example, you know, having like a part here that's technically in the shadow be on fire, so it illuminates the shadow around it, and stuff like that, but I'll have to, because I did figure out how to do this stuff on like a previous project. I'll have to see what I did there, because I thought I just set the layer blending mode to addition, and then, because the way it works in theory is that it just, if you set it to addition, then the values of that layer just get added onto the ones that are underneath. So, for example, if you have a color that is, you know, 100% red, 0% blue, 0% green underneath, and you add a color, and you put in the layer a color that is 100% blue, 0% red, 0% green, then the resulting color should be 100% red, 100% blue, 0% green, because you're adding the values of the two colors together, meaning they, no matter what color you add on that layer, the thing underneath only gets brighter. But for some reason it's not doing that, because if I do addition and then go over with a black brush, which is 0, 0, 0, it should theoretically do basically nothing, but it obviously does something, so something is not right there. And conversely, I think if you do something like multiply and go over with a white brush, it should theoretically not really get that much brighter or change at all, since it should multiply the two. It should multiply the two values. Maybe it's because they're not in the same group. That could be it. I think that's the reason why. So I'd have to put like this here. Okay, okay. And now it works. So now if we do addition, okay. And now, yeah, see here, now we get, despite this color not being that bright, it brightens the stuff all this stuff mainly, because the blending mode is set to addition. Yeah, this already looks significantly better, but yeah, it'll need more work. But yeah, that'll have to happen off screen. But I do really like this idea of the you know, singed burning paper around Karlach. Definitely fits her. So, yeah, let's wind this down. I'm just gonna quickly see if there's anyone we might raid at this point. No, I'm not really seeing anyone. So, let's wind down. The time has come for us to acknowledge an ending. It has been my pleasure to be your host tonight, and if you enjoyed the broadcast, be sure to perform those rites of appeasement upon the stream for the gods of the algorithm and all that. Hope to see you all again soon on Saturday, where we'll put this thumbnail to use. I'll obviously finish it up by then. And when we continue our journey towards Baldur's Gate. Until then or later, hope to see you all again soon. And safe travels, and have a nice night.